Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Library. Tonight, we are wandering gently into the extraordinary realm of biodiversity, where countless forms of life weave together in patterns more intricate than we can fully imagine. This is not just a journey through species and ecosystems, but through the beautiful complexity that allows life itself to flourish on our planet. From the smallest bacteria, invisible to the eye, to forests that stretch beyond the horizon, every living thing plays a part in the grand story of our world. Biodiversity is not merely variety, it is connection, resilience, and the quiet magic that keeps our planet breathing. If you enjoy these peaceful explorations, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps other curious minds find their way here, one restful soul at a time. But for now, just settle in. Let the world outside fade away, and allow yourself to be carried along on this gentle river of wonder. Let us begin. Biodiversity refers to every living thing on Earth and the ways they interact with one another. The word itself is simple, but what it describes is wonderfully vast. Biologists often define biodiversity as the totality of genes, species, and ecosystems in a region. This means every animal, every plant, every microscopic organism, and every environment they call home. A single handful of healthy soil contains more microorganisms than there are people on Earth. A coral reef smaller than a city block can shelter thousands of species. Biodiversity exists at every scale, from the genetic codes that make each organism unique to the sprawling networks of ecosystems that cover continents. When we look closely at the natural world, we see not isolation, but connection. One tree depends on fungi in the soil. Those fungi depend on nutrients from decomposing leaves. The leaves fell from branches visited by birds who carried seeds from distant forests. Everything is linked in ways both visible and hidden. Researchers estimate that between 3 million and 100 million species live on Earth. The range is so wide because we have only identified about 1.7 million species so far. The rest remain undiscovered, unnamed, waiting quietly in rainforests, deep oceans, and even in the soil beneath our feet. Every year, scientists describe new species for the first time. These discoveries remind us how much we still have to learn about the world we share. Some of these species are tiny insects, no bigger than a grain of sand. Others are fish living in the deepest ocean trenches, or plants growing on remote mountain slopes. Each one has evolved over millions of years to fit precisely into its environment. Each one holds secrets about survival, adaptation, and the creative power of nature. The unknown majority of species live mostly in tropical regions, where warmth and moisture create conditions for life to multiply and diversify beyond measure. Tropical ecosystems hold more biodiversity than any other places on Earth. Rainforests near the equator are home to more than half of all known species, even though they cover only 6% of the land. A single hectare of Amazon rainforest can contain over 400 different types of trees. By comparison, all of North America has fewer than 700 native tree species. Warmth, rainfall, and sunlight combine in the tropics to create an environment where life flourishes in layers. The forest floor, the understory, the canopy, and the emergent layer above it all function as separate worlds, each with its own community of organisms. Temperature and moisture remain relatively stable throughout the year, allowing species to specialize in ways that would be impossible in colder or drier climates. This stability over millions of years has given tropical ecosystems time to develop complexity that staggers the imagination. Coral reefs are sometimes called the rainforests of the sea. They occupy less than 1% of the ocean floor, yet they provide homes for at least 25% of all marine species. Over 4,000 species of fish depend on coral reefs at some point in their lives. The reefs themselves are built by tiny animals called polyps, which secrete calcium carbonate to create hard structures. Over centuries, these structures grow into sprawling underwater cities. The colors we associate with coral reefs come from algae living inside the coral tissue. These algae and corals exist in a partnership. The coral provides shelter and access to sunlight. The algae produce food through photosynthesis and share it with the coral. This relationship allows coral reefs to thrive in nutrient-poor waters, building oases of life in what would otherwise be underwater deserts. When coral reefs are healthy, they support not only fish but also invertebrates, sea turtles, marine mammals, and countless microorganisms, all woven together in relationships of stunning complexity. The Amazon rainforest contains roughly 10% of all species on Earth. It stretches across 9 countries and covers an area larger than the entire European Union. Within this immense forest live more than 2.5 million insect species, tens of thousands of plant species, and about 2,000 species of birds and mammals. At least 40,000 plant species have been documented, and scientists believe many more remain undiscovered. The Amazon River and its tributaries hold more freshwater fish species than any other river system in the world. Between 1999 and 2009 alone, researchers identified 1,200 new species of plants and vertebrates in the Amazon. These ranged from frogs the size of a coin to anacondas 4 meters long. The sheer density of life in the Amazon means that every layer of the forest, every bend in the river, and every patch of soil teems with organisms interacting in ways that science is only beginning to understand. Biodiversity exists on 3 main levels. The first is genetic diversity, which refers to the variation in genes within a single species. No 2 humans are exactly alike, and the same is true for oak trees, monarch butterflies, and every other species. Genetic diversity is what allows populations to adapt to changing conditions. If a new disease appears, some individuals may carry genes that help them resist it. If the climate shifts, some members of a population may tolerate heat or cold better than others. Without genetic diversity, a species has little flexibility when the world around it changes. The second level is species diversity, which describes the number of different species in a given area. A forest with 100 tree species is more diverse than one with only 10. The third level is ecosystem diversity, the variety of habitats and communities across a landscape. Deserts, wetlands, grasslands, and forests all represent different ecosystems, and each supports its own unique assemblage of species. These 3 levels are intertwined. Changes at one level ripple through the others. Losing genetic diversity weakens a species. Losing species weakens an ecosystem. Losing ecosystems reduces the overall biodiversity of the planet. Species richness is often used as a simple measure of biodiversity. It counts how many different species are present in a particular area. Colombia and Kenya each have more than 1,000 breeding species of birds. In contrast, the forests of Great Britain and eastern North America host fewer than 200 bird species. A coral reef off northern Australia may have 500 species of fish, while a rocky shoreline in Japan may have only 100. These differences tell us that certain places are natural centers of diversity. Islands, mountains, and tropical regions often have high numbers of unique species found nowhere else. These areas are sometimes called biodiversity hotspots. They are places where conservation efforts can protect the greatest variety of life with the least amount of land. But every ecosystem, even those with fewer species, plays an important role. A forest with 200 bird species still provides homes, food, and services that nothing else can replace. Biodiversity creates resilience in ecosystems. Imagine a forest where only one species of tree grows. If a disease strikes that tree, the entire forest could vanish. But in a diverse forest with dozens of tree species, a disease may harm one type while leaving the others unaffected. The forest survives because it has variety. The same principle applies to all ecosystems. Diverse communities are better able to withstand droughts, floods, fires, and other disturbances. They recover more quickly when something goes wrong. This resilience matters not only for the plants and animals themselves, but also for the people who depend on healthy ecosystems. Forests filter water and store carbon. Wetlands absorb floodwaters and purify runoff. Grasslands prevent erosion and provide forage for livestock. These ecosystem services emerge from the combined actions of many species working together. When biodiversity declines, so does the ability of ecosystems to provide these services. Pollination is one of the most important ecosystem services provided by biodiversity. Flowering plants depend on animals to carry pollen from one flower to another. Bees, butterflies, birds, bats, and even some beetles act as pollinators. Without them, many plants could not reproduce. About 75% of the world's food crops benefit from pollination by animals. Apples, almonds, tomatoes, blueberries, and countless other fruits and vegetables rely on this invisible collaboration. A single bee colony may visit millions of flowers in a season. Each visit is a small act that keeps ecosystems functioning and food systems productive. When pollinator populations decline, the effects cascade through both natural and agricultural systems. Flowers produce fewer seeds. Crops yield less fruit. Birds and other animals that eat those seeds and fruits also suffer. Protecting biodiversity means protecting these essential partnerships. Soil biodiversity is often overlooked, but absolutely vital. A single gram of soil can contain billions of bacteria, along with fungi, protozoa, nematodes, and tiny arthropods. These organisms form an underground network that supports all terrestrial life. Bacteria and fungi decompose dead plant material, breaking down leaves, wood, and roots into simpler compounds. In the process, they release nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus back into the soil, making them available for plants to absorb. Some fungi form partnerships with plant roots, extending the root's reach and helping plants access water and minerals from greater distances. In return, the plants provide the fungi with sugars produced through photosynthesis. Earthworms and other soil animals improve soil structure by burrowing through it, creating channels that allow air and water to penetrate. Without this hidden diversity, soil would become lifeless and unable to support the forests, grasslands, and crops that cover the land. Mycorrhizal fungi are among the most important partners in the soil. These fungi form connections with the roots of most plant species. Their thread-like structures, called hyphae, extend far beyond the reach of roots, exploring the soil for nutrients and water. In some ecosystems, mycorrhizal fungi can make up 75% of the total soil biomass. A single ounce of soil may contain up to 176 miles of fungal hyphae. These fungi do more than gather resources. They also help plants resist diseases, tolerate drought, and withstand salty soils. They even connect different plants together, allowing trees of different species to share nutrients through an underground network, sometimes called the Wood Wide Web. This network means that a mature tree can send sugars to a younger tree, struggling in the shade. It means that when one plant is attacked by insects, it can send chemical signals through the fungal network to warn its neighbors. Biodiversity in the soil creates a foundation for biodiversity above ground. Freshwater ecosystems are remarkably diverse, despite covering only a tiny fraction of the Earth's surface. Freshwater habitats account for just 0.01% of the world's water, yet they support 1/3 of all vertebrate species and nearly 10% of all known animal species. Rivers, lakes, wetlands, and streams provide homes for fish, amphibians, insects, crustaceans, and countless microorganisms. Some rivers in the Amazon basin contain more fish species than all the rivers of Europe combined. This concentration of diversity reflects the importance of freshwater habitats as both homes and corridors. Rivers connect mountains to oceans, carrying nutrients and organisms across vast distances. Wetlands filter pollutants and provide nurseries for young fish. Ponds and lakes serve as isolated worlds where unique species evolve. Because fresh water is essential for all life, the biodiversity of these habitats supports not only aquatic organisms, but also birds, mammals, and plants that depend on water. Genetic diversity within a single species can be surprisingly large. Every individual organism has a unique combination of genes inherited from its parents. This genetic variation determines traits like size, color, disease resistance, and behavior. In wild populations, genetic diversity ensures that at least some individuals can survive when conditions change. If a population becomes too small or isolated, genetic diversity declines. Individuals become more similar to one another, and harmful genetic mutations become more common. This can lead to inbreeding, where closely related individuals produce offspring with reduced fitness. Conservation biologists work to maintain genetic diversity by protecting large, connected populations, and sometimes by moving individuals between isolated groups to introduce new genes. Genetic diversity is the raw material for evolution. Without it, species cannot adapt to new challenges or take advantage of new opportunities. Animal adaptations showcase the creative power of biodiversity. Every species has evolved unique features that help it survive in its particular environment. Some adaptations are physical, like the long neck of a giraffe that allows it to reach leaves high in the trees. Others are behavioral, like the migration of monarch butterflies from North America to Mexico each winter. Still others are physiological, like the ability of camels to store fat in their humps and survive for long periods without water. The platypus has a bill that can detect electric fields generated by other animals, helping it hunt in murky water. The wood frog survives freezing temperatures by allowing ice to form in its body, protecting its cells with high concentrations of glucose. The mimic octopus can change its shape, color, and behavior to imitate more than 15 different marine species, confusing both predators and prey. Each of these adaptations arose over countless generations through the process of natural selection, where individuals with traits that improve survival are more likely to reproduce and pass those traits to their offspring. Camouflage is an adaptation used by many species to blend into their surroundings. Predators use camouflage to stalk prey without being seen. Prey animals use it to hide from predators. The leaf-tailed gecko of Madagascar has a tail that looks exactly like a dead leaf, allowing it to disappear among the branches where it lives. The Arctic hare has white fur in winter and brown fur in summer, matching the snow and tundra. Some insects resemble twigs, bark, or even bird droppings. Camouflage is not just about color. It also involves patterns, textures, and behaviors. An animal that looks like a stick must also hold still and position itself at the right angle. A fish with stripes that match the coral must move slowly and stay near the reef. The effectiveness of camouflage depends on the entire package of traits working together. This coordination shows how finely tuned organisms become to their environments over time. Symbiotic relationships are partnerships between different species that benefit one or both partners. Mutualism is a type of symbiosis where both species benefit. The relationship between coral and algae is mutualistic. The algae provide food through photosynthesis, and the coral provides protection and access to sunlight. Cleaner fish pick parasites off the bodies of larger fish, gaining a meal while keeping the larger fish healthy. Bees collect nectar from flowers and pollinate them in the process, helping both the bees and the plants. Another type of symbiosis is commensalism, where one species benefits and the other is unaffected. Small fish sometimes live among the tentacles of jellyfish, gaining protection without harming or helping the jellyfish. Barnacles attach to whales and travel the ocean without affecting the whale. Parasitism is a third type of symbiosis, where one organism benefits at the expense of another. Ticks feed on the blood of mammals, weakening their hosts. Some wasps lay eggs inside caterpillars, and the wasp larvae consume the caterpillar from the inside. These relationships, whether beneficial or harmful, add layers of complexity to ecosystems and illustrate how interconnected life truly is. Decomposers play an essential but often invisible role in biodiversity. Fungi, bacteria, and invertebrates like earthworms and beetles break down dead plants and animals, returning nutrients to the soil. Without decomposers, organic matter would pile up, and nutrients would remain locked away in unusable forms. Forests would suffocate under mountains of fallen leaves. Dead animals would litter the landscape. But decomposers work quietly, efficiently, recycling everything. Some fungi specialize in breaking down wood. Others decompose leaves or animal carcasses. Bacteria break down compounds that even fungi cannot digest. Earthworms consume soil and organic matter together, mixing them and speeding the decomposition process. Decomposers do not just clean up, they also enrich the soil, making it fertile and capable of supporting new growth. They close the loop in the nutrient cycle, ensuring that nothing is wasted and everything returns to the system. Predators and prey exist in a delicate balance that shapes ecosystems. Predators help control the populations of their prey, preventing any one species from becoming too abundant. When wolves were removed from Yellowstone National Park in the early 20th century, elk populations exploded. Without predators to keep them in check, elk overgrazed streamside vegetation. This caused erosion, reduced bird habitat, and altered the flow of rivers. When wolves were reintroduced decades later, elk numbers declined and their behavior changed. They spent less time grazing near streams, allowing plants to recover. Birds returned, beavers built dams, rivers stabilized. The return of a single predator cascaded through the entire ecosystem, demonstrating how interconnected species are. Predators do not just take from ecosystems. They shape the behavior, distribution, and abundance of other species in ways that maintain balance and diversity. Some animals have evolved to live in extreme environments where few others can survive. Tardigrades, also known as water bears, are microscopic animals that can withstand temperatures from just above absolute zero to well above the boiling point of water. They can survive pressures greater than those in the deepest ocean trenches and radiation levels that would be lethal to most organisms. They can even survive the vacuum of space. Tardigrades achieve this by entering a state called cryptobiosis, where they dry out and shut down their metabolism almost completely. They can remain in this state for years and then revive when conditions improve. Other extremophiles include bacteria that live in boiling hot springs, fish that inhabit the frigid waters beneath Antarctic ice, and microbes that thrive in acidic environments where nothing else can grow. These organisms expand our understanding of what life can tolerate and where it might exist, even on other planets. Migration is a remarkable adaptation that allows animals to move between different habitats to find food, water, or breeding grounds. Monarch butterflies travel thousands of miles from North America to Mexico, a journey that takes multiple generations to complete. Arctic terns migrate from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back again each year, covering more than 40,000 miles. Wildebeest in Africa move in massive herds, following the rains across the Serengeti. Salmon return from the ocean to the rivers where they were born, swimming upstream against powerful currents to spawn. Migration connects distant ecosystems, carrying nutrients, energy, and even seeds from one place to another. Migratory animals face many dangers along the way, from predators to storms to human-made obstacles. Yet they persist, driven by instincts honed over millions of years. Bioluminescence is the ability of some organisms to produce light. This adaptation is found in many marine species, from tiny plankton to deep-sea fish. Bioluminescent organisms use chemical reactions to create light without heat. Some use it to attract prey. The anglerfish dangles a glowing lure in front of its mouth to draw in curious fish. Some use it to communicate. Fireflies flash specific patterns to find mates. Some use it for camouflage. Certain squid produce light on their undersides that matches the sunlight filtering down from above, making them invisible to predators looking up from below. Bioluminescence evolved independently many times in different groups of organisms, showing how useful this adaptation can be. In the dark depths of the ocean, where sunlight never reaches, bioluminescence is one of the most common sources of light. Island ecosystems often develop unique biodiversity because they are isolated from mainland populations. When a species reaches an island, it may evolve in ways that differ from its relatives on the mainland. Over time, this can lead to the formation of new species found nowhere else. Madagascar separated from the African continent 66 million years ago, and since then, its species have evolved independently. Today, about 90% of the wildlife in Madagascar is endemic, meaning it exists nowhere else on Earth. The island is home to lemurs, fossors, and chameleons that look and behave unlike their relatives elsewhere. The Galapagos Islands, isolated in the Pacific Ocean, famously inspired Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Each island has its own varieties of finches, tortoises, and iguanas, slightly different from one another because they adapted to the specific conditions of their island. Islands are natural laboratories for studying how biodiversity arises and changes over time. The concept of a keystone species describes an organism whose presence has an outsized effect on its ecosystem. Remove a keystone species, and the entire structure of the ecosystem can change. Sea otters are a keystone species along the Pacific coast of North America. They eat sea urchins, which in turn eat kelp. When otters are present, urchin populations stay low and kelp forests thrive. These forests provide habitat for many other species, from fish to invertebrates to seabirds. When otters were hunted nearly to extinction in the 20th century, urchin populations exploded and kelp forests disappeared. Without the kelp, the entire ecosystem collapsed. Protecting keystone species is often a priority in conservation because their presence benefits so many others. Elephants, beavers, and certain species of coral can also be keystone species, shaping their environments in ways that support biodiversity. Food webs illustrate the complexity of biodiversity. A food web shows how energy and nutrients flow through an ecosystem as organisms eat and are eaten by others. Unlike a simple food chain, which might show grass being eaten by a rabbit, which is then eaten by a fox, a food web includes all the connections between species. The grass is eaten not just by rabbits, but also by deer, insects, and mice. The rabbit is eaten not just by foxes, but also by hawks, owls, and snakes. The fox eats rabbits, but it also eats berries, insects, and carrion. Each species is connected to many others, and the web becomes incredibly intricate. This complexity provides stability. If one species declines, others can fill its role. If one food source disappears, predators can switch to alternatives. Food webs remind us that no species exists in isolation. Every organism is embedded in a network of relationships that spans the entire ecosystem. Ecosystem engineers are species that physically modify their environment in ways that create habitat for others. Beavers are classic ecosystem engineers. They build dams that turn streams into ponds. These ponds create wetlands, which provide habitat for frogs, turtles, fish, waterfowl, and countless invertebrates. The dead trees flooded by the pond become homes for woodpeckers and insects. The slower-moving water traps sediment and filters pollutants. Beavers do not build dams to help other species. They do it to create deep water where they can hide from predators and store food. But the effects of their engineering ripple through the ecosystem, increasing biodiversity. Coral polyps are also ecosystem engineers. They build reefs that shelter fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. Termites build massive mounds that modify soil structure and create microhabitats used by other insects, reptiles, and small mammals. Ecosystem engineers show how the actions of one species can shape the environment for many others. Forests store enormous amounts of biodiversity, both above and below ground. They cover about 30% of the Earth's land surface and contain 80% of terrestrial biodiversity. A single tree in a tropical rainforest can be home to hundreds of species of insects, along with epiphytes like orchids and bromeliads, fungi, birds, reptiles, and mammals. The canopy layer alone, high above the forest floor, functions as a separate world with its own climate and community of organisms. Many canopy species never descend to the ground. They find everything they need among the branches, including water collected in leaves and tree holes. Below the canopy, the understory and forest floor support shade-tolerant plants, decomposers, and animals that hunt among the leaf litter. Forests also regulate climate by absorbing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen. They influence rainfall patterns and protect watersheds. Biodiversity of forests is inseparable from the services they provide to the planet. Wetlands are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. They include marshes, swamps, bogs, and floodplains, where water covers the soil for at least part of the year. Wetlands provide habitat for fish, amphibians, birds, and plants specially adapted to waterlogged conditions. Mangrove forests grow in coastal wetlands, their roots stabilizing shorelines and providing nurseries for fish and shrimp. Inland wetlands act as sponges, absorbing excess water during floods and releasing it slowly during dry periods. They filter pollutants from runoff before it reaches rivers and lakes. Despite their importance, wetlands have been drained and filled for agriculture and development. Since 1970, about 35% of the world's wetlands have been lost. This loss has reduced biodiversity, increased flooding, and degraded water quality. Protecting and restoring wetlands benefits both wildlife and people. Grasslands are often underestimated, but support remarkable biodiversity. They cover about 40% of the Earth's land surface and include prairies, savannas, and steppes. Grasses dominate these ecosystems, but they are far from monotonous. Hundreds of grass species coexist, along with wildflowers, shrubs, and scattered trees. Grasslands support large herds of grazing animals, from bison in North America to wildebeest in Africa. These herbivores are food for predators like lions, wolves, and raptors. Grasslands also teem with insects, rodents, and birds that nest on or near the ground. Below the surface, grassland soils hold some of the richest and deepest organic matter on the planet, built up over millennia by the dense root systems of grasses. These roots create habitat for soil organisms and store carbon that would otherwise contribute to climate change. Grasslands are resilient to fire and grazing, which have shaped them over millions of years, but they are vulnerable to ploughing and conversion to agriculture. Deserts may seem barren, but they support surprising biodiversity. Organisms that live in deserts have adapted to extreme heat, intense sunlight, and very little water. Cacti store water in their thick stems and have spines instead of leaves to reduce water loss. Some desert plants remain dormant for years, sprouting and flowering only when rare rains arrive. Animals like the kangaroo rat extract all the water they need from the seeds they eat and never drink liquid water. Desert reptiles regulate their body temperature by moving between sun and shade. Nocturnal animals avoid the heat by staying underground during the day and emerging at night. Even in the driest deserts, bacteria and fungi live in the soil, breaking down sparse organic matter and supporting food webs. Deserts remind us that biodiversity is not just about abundance. It is also about the remarkable ways life finds to persist in the most challenging conditions. Mountain ecosystems host unique biodiversity because conditions change dramatically with elevation. At the base of a mountain, you might find tropical forest. As you climb, the forest transitions to temperate woodland, then to alpine meadows, and finally to barren rock and ice. Each zone supports different species adapted to the temperature, moisture, and oxygen levels at that altitude. Many mountain species are endemic, found only on a particular mountain range or even a single peak. This is because mountains act as islands of habitat, surrounded by lowlands that are too warm or dry for alpine species to cross. Climate change is pushing species higher up the slopes as temperatures rise. But eventually, there is nowhere left to go. Mountaintops are finite, and species adapted to cold conditions may have no refuge. Protecting mountain biodiversity means protecting entire elevation gradients, so species can move as needed. The deep sea is one of the least explored and most biodiverse regions on Earth. More than half the ocean is deeper than 3,000 meters, yet we know very little about what lives there. The deep sea is cold, dark, and under immense pressure. No sunlight penetrates to these depths, so food is scarce. Yet life persists in forms both strange and beautiful. Deep-sea fish have enormous mouths and stretchy stomachs to swallow prey larger than themselves. Some produce light to attract mates or lure prey. Giant squid, tube worms, and bizarre jellyfish inhabit the dark waters. Hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor release superheated water rich in minerals, creating oases of life powered not by sunlight but by chemosynthesis. Bacteria at these vents convert chemicals into energy, and entire communities of organisms, from clams to crabs to fish, depend on them. The deep sea may hold more biodiversity than we currently realize, with countless species still undiscovered. Biodiversity provides ecosystem services that are essential for human survival. Forests produce oxygen, store carbon, and regulate water cycles. Wetlands filter pollutants and reduce flooding. Coral reefs protect coastlines from storms and provide nurseries for fish that feed millions of people. Pollinators ensure the reproduction of crops that make up a large portion of the human diet. Soil organisms maintain the fertility that allows agriculture to thrive. These services have been estimated to be worth trillions of dollars annually, though their true value is impossible to calculate because they cannot be replaced by human technology. When biodiversity declines, these services decline with it. Forests that are logged and not replanted lose their ability to regulate water and store carbon. Wetlands that are drained no longer filter pollutants. Coral reefs that are damaged by warming waters no longer protect shorelines or support fish populations. Protecting biodiversity is not just about saving species. It is about maintaining the systems that support all life, including human life. Biodiversity also holds untapped potential for medicine. Many modern drugs are derived from compounds found in plants, animals, and microorganisms. Aspirin comes from willow bark. Penicillin comes from a fungus. The rosy periwinkle, a plant from Madagascar, produces chemicals used to treat leukemia and Hodgkin's disease. Researchers continue to explore biodiversity in search of new medicines. Venoms from spiders, snakes, and cone snails are being studied for their potential to treat pain, heart disease, and cancer. Antibiotics produced by bacteria in the soil have saved countless lives, but antibiotic-resistant bacteria are becoming a growing threat. Scientists hope that studying the chemical defenses of other organisms will lead to new treatments. Every species that goes extinct takes with it a unique set of genes and biochemical pathways that might have held solutions to human problems. Preserving biodiversity means preserving possibilities we have not yet imagined. Biodiversity is not evenly distributed across the planet. Some regions are extraordinarily rich in species, while others have fewer. The tropics hold the greatest diversity, especially in rainforests and coral reefs. Biodiversity generally decreases as you move toward the poles, with fewer species in temperate and Arctic regions. This gradient exists because tropical regions have stable climates, high productivity, and long evolutionary histories. Near the equator, growing seasons are year-round, and competition for resources is intense, driving species to specialize and diversify. In colder climates, seasons limit the types of organisms that can survive, and only species that can tolerate freezing temperatures and long winters persist. Islands, mountains, and isolated habitats also tend to have high levels of endemism, where unique species evolve in response to local conditions. Understanding where biodiversity is concentrated helps guide conservation efforts. Indigenous peoples play a critical role in protecting biodiversity. Indigenous communities manage large areas of land around the world, including about 40% of all protected areas. These lands often have higher biodiversity than areas managed by governments or private entities because indigenous peoples have deep knowledge of their environments and traditions of sustainable resource use. They understand the rhythms of forests, the habits of animals, and the properties of plants in ways that have been passed down through generations. Many indigenous languages contain words and concepts that describe ecological relationships no longer understood by modern science. When indigenous peoples lose their land or their knowledge is dismissed, biodiversity suffers. Conservation efforts are most effective when they work with indigenous communities, respecting their rights and incorporating their knowledge. Protecting biodiversity means protecting the cultures and ways of life that have coexisted with nature for thousands of years. Biodiversity has declined dramatically in recent decades. Scientists estimate that species are going extinct at a rate 100 to 1,000 times higher than the natural background rate. Habitat destruction is the leading cause. Forests are cleared for agriculture, wetlands are drained for development, and grasslands are ploughed under. Pollution, overfishing, hunting, and climate change also contribute. When habitats are fragmented, species become isolated in small patches, unable to support healthy populations. Genetic diversity declines, making species more vulnerable to disease and environmental change. A report from 2019 estimated that 1 million animal and plant species are at risk of extinction. This loss threatens the stability of ecosystems and the services they provide. It reduces the resilience of nature and narrows the possibilities for future adaptation. Reversing this trend requires protecting habitats, restoring degraded ecosystems, and reducing the pressures that drive biodiversity loss. Climate change is becoming one of the greatest threats to biodiversity. Rising temperatures shift the ranges of species, forcing them to move toward cooler areas, higher elevations, or deeper waters. Some species can adapt or migrate, but others cannot. Coral reefs are particularly vulnerable. Warmer ocean temperatures cause coral bleaching, where corals expel the algae that provide them with food. Without the algae, corals starve and can perish. Between 2014 and 2017, about 70% of coral reefs worldwide experienced bleaching events. Many recovered, but recovery takes years, and repeated bleaching weakens reefs. Changes in precipitation patterns also affect biodiversity. Some regions are becoming wetter, others drier. Droughts stress plants and animals, while floods destroy habitats. Seasonal cues like temperature and day length trigger migrations and breeding. When these cues shift, species can miss the timing of critical events like food availability or nesting sites. Protected areas are one of the most effective tools for conserving biodiversity. National parks, wildlife reserves, and marine protected areas set aside habitat where species can live without the pressures of development, logging, or fishing. These areas provide refuges for threatened species and allow ecosystems to function naturally. Some protected areas are small and focus on specific habitats or species. Others are vast landscapes that preserve entire ecosystems. The effectiveness of protected areas depends on how well they are managed. Poaching, illegal logging, and encroachment can undermine protection. But when protected areas are well funded and well enforced, they succeed in maintaining biodiversity. Creating new protected areas and expanding existing ones is essential, especially in biodiversity hotspots, where the greatest number of species can be conserved with limited land. Restoration of degraded ecosystems can help reverse biodiversity loss. When forests are replanted, wetlands are restored, and rivers are cleaned, species can return. Restoration is not always about returning to a pristine past. It is about creating conditions where ecosystems can function and support biodiversity again. Some restoration projects focus on removing invasive species that outcompete native plants and animals. Others focus on reintroducing species that have been locally extinct. In some cases, restoration involves working with natural processes like fire or flooding that historically shaped ecosystems. Restoration can be challenging and expensive, but it offers hope. It shows that human actions can heal as well as harm. Restored ecosystems do not replace intact ones, but they contribute to the overall health of the planet and provide habitat where it has been lost. Biodiversity also includes the relationships between species and their environments. These relationships form the structure of ecosystems. A forest is not just a collection of trees. It is the trees, the fungi in the soil, the insects on the leaves, the birds in the branches, and the cycles of nutrient flow that connect them all. When we protect biodiversity, we protect these connections. When we lose a species, we lose not just that organism, but also its role in the web of life. A bee that pollinates flowers, a predator that controls herbivore populations, a tree that provides shelter for dozens of other species, each contributes something irreplaceable. Understanding biodiversity means understanding that nature is not a collection of isolated parts, but a living system where everything is interconnected. The web of life is fragile yet resilient. It has endured ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and asteroid impacts. It has adapted to changing climates and shifting continents over billions of years. But it has never faced changes as rapid or as widespread as those caused by human activity. The good news is that nature has an extraordinary capacity to recover when given the chance. Forests regrow when logging stops. Fish populations rebound when overfishing ends. Species return when habitats are protected. Biodiversity is not lost forever if we act in time. Every effort to conserve a forest, clean a river, or protect a species makes a difference. Every person who learns about biodiversity and shares that knowledge contributes to its preservation. The story of life on Earth is still being written, and we have the power to influence its next chapters. Biodiversity reminds us that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. We share the planet with millions of other species, each with its own story, its own place, its own quiet purpose. We depend on them for the air we breathe, the food we eat, the water we drink, and the beauty that inspires us. In protecting biodiversity, we protect the conditions that make life possible. We honor the complexity and creativity of evolution. We preserve options for the future. And we acknowledge that every living thing has value, not just for what it provides to us, but for what it is in itself. The more we learn about biodiversity, the more we see how little we truly know, and how much remains to discover. Every forest, every reef, every patch of soil holds secrets waiting to be revealed. The ocean contains biodiversity that rivals and sometimes exceeds that of land. Marine ecosystems are home to organisms ranging from microscopic plankton to the largest animal ever to exist, the blue whale. Blue whales can reach lengths of nearly 100 feet and weigh as much as 200 tons, yet they feed almost exclusively on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill. A single whale may consume 4 tons of krill in a day during feeding season. The presence of whales affects entire ocean ecosystems. Their movements stir nutrients from the deep sea to the surface. Their waste fertilizes phytoplankton, which form the base of marine food webs and produce much of the oxygen we breathe. When whales pass away naturally, their bodies sink to the ocean floor and create unique habitats called whale falls, supporting specialized communities of organisms for decades. Mangrove forests grow where land meets sea in tropical and subtropical regions. These trees have adapted to survive in salt water, something most plants cannot do. Their roots arch above the water, providing stability in soft mud and creating sheltered nurseries for fish and crustaceans. Mangroves protect coastlines from storms and erosion, filtering pollutants from water before it reaches the ocean. They also store enormous amounts of carbon in their trunks, branches, roots, and the thick layers of organic matter in the soil beneath them. Despite covering less than 1% of tropical forests, mangroves store up to 10 times more carbon per area than terrestrial forests. Many commercial fish species spend their juvenile stages in mangrove forests before moving to coral reefs or open ocean. Shrimp, crabs, and mollusks thrive in the tangled roots. Birds nest in the branches. The biodiversity of mangroves supports both marine and terrestrial life. Seagrass meadows are underwater prairies that grow in shallow coastal waters around the world. Seagrasses are not algae, but true flowering plants that evolved from land plants millions of years ago. They produce flowers, fruits, and seeds, though most reproduction happens through vegetative growth, with stems spreading horizontally to form dense meadows. These meadows provide food and habitat for sea turtles, manatees, fish, seahorses, and countless invertebrates. They also stabilize sediments, improve water clarity, and store carbon. Like mangroves, seagrasses are powerful carbon sinks, storing carbon in their tissues and in the sediments where their roots grow. Seagrass meadows have declined significantly due to pollution, coastal development, and damage from boat propellers and anchors. Protecting and restoring them benefits both biodiversity and climate. Kelp forests are underwater ecosystems dominated by large brown algae that can grow more than 150 feet tall. These forests occur in cold, nutrient-rich waters along rocky coastlines. Kelp provides food and shelter for sea urchins, abalone, fish, seals, and sea otters. The dense canopy of kelp blades at the surface shades the water below, creating different zones where different species thrive. Small fish hide among the fronds to avoid predators. Invertebrates graze on the kelp or filter food from the water. Sea otters rest by wrapping themselves in kelp to avoid floating away while they sleep. Kelp forests are incredibly productive, growing up to 2 feet per day under ideal conditions. Like coral reefs, they are sensitive to environmental changes. Warming water, pollution, and the loss of predators like sea otters can cause kelp forests to decline and be replaced by less diverse habitats. The open ocean, far from coastlines and beyond the reach of sunlight, is home to remarkable biodiversity. Marine snow, a continuous rain of organic particles, drifts downward from the surface, providing food for organisms living in the dark depths. These particles include dead plankton, fecal pellets, and fragments of larger organisms. As they sink, bacteria and other microbes colonize them, breaking them down and recycling nutrients. Animals in the deep sea have adapted to near total darkness, cold temperatures, and high pressure. Many are bioluminescent, producing their own light to attract prey, find mates, or confuse predators. Others have enormous eyes to capture every photon of light. Some fish have jaws that unhinge to swallow prey larger than themselves. The deep sea remains one of the least explored regions on Earth, and every expedition discovers new species. Estuaries are places where rivers meet the sea, mixing fresh water with salt water. These transitional zones are among the most productive ecosystems on the planet. Nutrients carried by rivers combine with the tidal movements of the ocean, creating rich feeding grounds for fish, birds, and invertebrates. Estuaries serve as nurseries for many marine species. Young fish and crustaceans find food and shelter in the calm, shallow waters before migrating to the open ocean. Migratory birds stop in estuaries to rest and refuel during long journeys. Oysters, clams, and mussels filter water, removing pollutants and improving clarity. Salt marshes fringe many estuaries, their grasses stabilizing sediments and providing habitat for nesting birds and small mammals. The biodiversity of estuaries supports commercial fisheries and protects inland areas from storm surges. Ponds and lakes, though often small and isolated, contain surprising biodiversity. Each body of fresh water is a self-contained world with its own community of organisms. Algae and aquatic plants form the base of the food web, producing oxygen, providing structure. Insects like dragonflies, water striders, and diving beetles hunt and scavenge. Amphibians like frogs and salamanders breed in the water, laying eggs that develop into swimming larvae. Fish, adapted to still water, such as sunfish and bass, feed on insects and smaller fish. Turtles bask on logs, absorbing warmth from the sun. Herons and kingfishers hunt along the edges. Beneath the surface, zooplankton and tiny crustaceans graze on algae, and worms burrow through the sediments. The size of a lake or pond influences its biodiversity. Larger bodies of water tend to support more species because they offer more habitat variety and are less vulnerable to disturbances like droughts. Rivers and streams connect landscapes, carrying water, nutrients, and organisms from mountains to oceans. The flow of water creates distinct habitats. Fast-flowing sections have rocky bottoms and high oxygen levels, supporting fish like trout and salmon that need cold, clean water. Slower sections have silty bottoms and warmer temperatures, favoring bass, catfish, and turtles. Riparian zones, the areas along riverbanks, are biodiversity hotspots. Trees and shrubs provide shade that keeps water cool, preventing overheating that would harm aquatic organisms. Their roots stabilize banks, preventing erosion. Leaves and branches that fall into the water become food for aquatic insects, which in turn feed fish and birds. Rivers also serve as corridors, allowing organisms to move between different habitats. Migratory fish like salmon travel hundreds of miles upstream to spawn, bringing nutrients from the ocean back to freshwater ecosystems. Bogs are wetlands characterized by acidic water, sphagnum moss, and a lack of flowing water. They form in cool, wet climates where decomposition happens slowly, causing layers of peat to accumulate over thousands of years. Bogs support unique biodiversity adapted to nutrient-poor acidic conditions. Carnivorous plants like sundews, pitcher plants, and bladderworts supplement their diet by trapping and digesting insects. Sphagnum moss dominates the landscape, creating a spongy mat that holds water. Beneath the moss, peat accumulates, storing carbon that would otherwise be released into the atmosphere. Bogs provide habitat for frogs, dragonflies, and birds like cranes and bitterns. They also preserve organic material remarkably well. Pollen, seeds, and even entire organisms can remain intact for millennia, providing scientists with records of past climates and ecosystems. Tundra ecosystems exist in the coldest regions of the planet, where temperatures are too low for trees to grow. Arctic tundra covers the northern edges of continents, while alpine tundra exists on high mountains. The growing season is short, sometimes only a few weeks, and the soil beneath the surface remains frozen year-round in a layer called permafrost. Despite these harsh conditions, tundra supports biodiversity. Low-growing plants like mosses, lichens, grasses, and dwarf shrubs form a carpet across the landscape. These plants provide food for herbivores like caribou, muskoxen, and lemmings. Predators like Arctic foxes, wolves, and snowy owls hunt the herbivores. Many tundra animals change color with the seasons, growing white fur or feathers in winter to blend with snow and brown or gray in summer to match the ground. Migratory birds travel to the tundra each summer to breed, taking advantage of the abundance of insects that emerge during the brief warm period. Savannas are grasslands with scattered trees, found mostly in Africa, South America, and Australia. They exist in regions with distinct wet and dry seasons. During the wet season, grasses grow rapidly, and herbivores gather in large numbers to graze. During the dry season, grasses wither and fires sweep across the landscape, clearing dead vegetation and preventing trees from dominating. Many savanna plants and animals are adapted to fire. Some trees have thick bark that protects them from flames. Some grasses grow from their base rather than their tips, allowing them to regrow quickly after being burned or grazed. Savannas support some of the most iconic wildlife on Earth. In Africa, elephants, giraffes, zebras, wildebeest, and countless species of antelope graze alongside predators like lions, cheetahs, leopards, and hyenas. Termites build towering mounds that serve as landmarks and habitats for other animals. The open landscape allows for the migrations of millions of herbivores, following the rains and fresh grass. Temperate forests experience 4 distinct seasons and are found in regions with moderate rainfall and temperatures. These forests are dominated by deciduous trees that lose their leaves in autumn, though some include evergreen conifers. Oaks, maples, beeches, and birches create a canopy that provides shade and habitat. In spring, wildflowers bloom on the forest floor before the trees leaf out and block the sunlight. In summer, the forest is green and buzzing with insects. In autumn, leaves turn brilliant colors before falling and carpeting the ground. In winter, the bare branches allow light to reach the forest floor, and animals survive on stored food or by hibernating. Temperate forests support deer, bears, foxes, raccoons, squirrels, and a wide variety of birds. Insects play crucial roles as pollinators, decomposers, and food for other animals. Fungi fruit in autumn, sending up mushrooms that release spores while breaking down wood and leaf litter underground. Boreal forests, also called taiga, form a band across the northern parts of North America, Europe, and Asia. These forests are dominated by coniferous trees like spruce, fir, and pine, which are adapted to cold temperatures and short growing seasons. The needle-shaped leaves reduce water loss and allow trees to photosynthesize even in winter. The forest floor is often covered with a thick layer of needles that decompose slowly in the cold climate, creating acidic soils. Boreal forests support fewer species than temperate or tropical forests, but the species present are specially adapted to the cold. Moose browse on shrubs and aquatic plants. Lynx hunt snowshoe hares in cycles that rise and fall over the years. Woodpeckers excavate nesting cavities in dead trees, which are later used by owls, squirrels, and other animals. Migratory songbirds travel to boreal forests each summer to nest and raise their young, feeding on the abundance of insects. Boreal forests store vast amounts of carbon in their trees and soils, making them important in regulating the global climate. Chaparral, also called Mediterranean scrubland, exists in regions with hot, dry summers and mild, wet winters. These ecosystems are found in California, the Mediterranean basin, Chile, South Africa, and Australia. The plants are adapted to drought and fire. Shrubs with thick, waxy leaves reduce water loss. Many plants have deep roots that tap into groundwater. Some seeds require the heat of fire to germinate, ensuring that new plants emerge after fires clear the landscape. Chaparral supports lizards, snakes, rabbits, coyotes, and birds like quail and roadrunners. Insects are abundant during the wet season, and bees pollinate the many flowering shrubs. Wildfires are a natural part of chaparral ecosystems, and many plants and animals have evolved to survive and even benefit from periodic burning. However, human development in chaparral regions has increased the frequency and intensity of fires, sometimes overwhelming the resilience of these ecosystems. Caves harbor unique biodiversity in perpetual darkness. Cave-dwelling organisms, called troglobites, have adapted to life without light. Many have lost their eyes and pigmentation, becoming pale and blind. They navigate using other senses like touch and smell. Cave fish, salamanders, insects, and crustaceans make their homes in underground streams and pools. Bats use caves as roosts, emerging at night to hunt insects and returning to rest during the day. Their droppings, called guano, accumulate on cave floors and provide nutrients for a community of decomposers and scavengers. Caves also serve as refuges for organisms during harsh conditions on the surface. Their constant temperatures and humidity make them stable environments. Some caves contain ancient formations like stalactites and stalagmites that have grown over thousands of years, and their undisturbed conditions preserve fossils and archaeological remains. Urban environments might seem devoid of biodiversity, but cities host surprising numbers of species. Parks, gardens, vacant lots, and even rooftops provide habitat for plants, insects, birds, and small mammals. Some species thrive in cities because they can exploit human resources. Pigeons, rats, and cockroaches are famous urban dwellers, but many other species adapt to city life. Peregrine falcons nest on skyscrapers and hunt pigeons in the streets below. Raccoons, opossums, and foxes forage in garbage bins and gardens. Native plants in urban green spaces attract pollinators like bees and butterflies. Urban waterways, though often polluted, still support fish, turtles, and waterfowl. Creating green corridors and preserving patches of native habitat can increase urban biodiversity, providing benefits for both wildlife and people. Access to nature in cities improves mental health, reduces stress, and connects people to the living world. Agricultural landscapes can support biodiversity when managed with care. Traditional farming practices often maintained hedgerows, ponds, and patches of forest alongside fields, providing habitat for wildlife. Crop rotation, cover cropping, and reduced pesticide use benefit soil organisms and pollinators. Some farms incorporate agroforestry, growing trees alongside crops to provide shade, improve soil, and create habitat. Birds control insect pests, reducing the need for chemical pesticides. Bats pollinate crops like bananas and agave and eat insects that damage plants. Encouraging biodiversity in agricultural landscapes can improve productivity while reducing environmental harm. However, industrial agriculture often simplifies landscapes, replacing diverse ecosystems with monocultures of a single crop. This reduces habitat, eliminates food sources for wildlife, and depletes soil health. Balancing food production with biodiversity conservation is one of the great challenges of our time. The concept of ecological succession describes how ecosystems change over time. After a disturbance like a fire, flood, or landslide, the first organisms to colonize the bare ground are called pioneer species. These are often fast-growing plants, lichens, or mosses that tolerate harsh conditions. As they grow and eventually pass away, they add organic matter to the soil, making it richer and able to support more species. Over time, new plants move in, outcompeting the pioneers. Shrubs replace grasses. Trees replace shrubs. Each stage of succession creates new habitats and attracts different animals. Early successional habitats support species that need open space and lots of sunlight. Late successional forests support species that thrive in shade and complex structure. Succession can take decades or centuries, depending on the environment. Understanding succession helps ecologists predict how ecosystems will recover from disturbances and guides restoration efforts. The nitrogen cycle is essential to biodiversity because nitrogen is a key component of proteins and DNA. Atmospheric nitrogen makes up 78% of the air, but is unusable by most organisms. Certain bacteria can fix nitrogen, converting it into forms that plants can absorb. These bacteria live in the soil or form partnerships with plants like legumes, which house the bacteria in root nodules. Plants use the nitrogen to grow, and animals obtain nitrogen by eating plants or other animals. When organisms pass away, excrete waste, decomposers break down the organic matter and release nitrogen back into the soil. Other bacteria convert nitrogen back into gas, completing the cycle. Human activities like burning fossil fuels and using synthetic fertilizers have disrupted the nitrogen cycle, leading to pollution and ecosystem imbalances. Understanding how biodiversity maintains these cycles is crucial for managing the health of our planet. The carbon cycle is another fundamental process supported by biodiversity. Plants absorb carbon dioxide from the air during photosynthesis and use it to build sugars, starches, and cellulose. This carbon becomes part of plant tissues, storing it for as long as the plant lives. When animals eat plants, the carbon moves into their bodies. When organisms pass away, decomposers break down their tissues and release carbon back into the atmosphere or soil. Some carbon becomes buried in sediments and, over millions of years, forms fossil fuels. Forests, grasslands, and oceans are major carbon sinks, storing vast amounts of carbon that would otherwise contribute to climate change. Protecting these ecosystems helps regulate the global climate. When forests are cleared or wetlands are drained, stored carbon is released rapidly, accelerating warming. Biodiversity underpins the carbon cycle, and the carbon cycle shapes biodiversity. The water cycle is closely linked to biodiversity. Plants absorb water from the soil through their roots and release it into the atmosphere through tiny pores in their leaves, a process called transpiration. This moisture rises into the air, forms clouds, and eventually falls as rain. Forests, especially tropical rainforests, generate much of their own rainfall through transpiration. When forests are cleared, local climates become drier, affecting not only the forest itself, but also surrounding regions. Wetlands store water and slowly release it, preventing floods and maintaining stream flow during dry periods. Mangroves and coral reefs protect coastlines from storm surges, reducing erosion and damage. The health of water systems depends on the biodiversity they contain. Vegetation filters pollutants, organisms break down waste, and complex food webs maintain balance. Invasive species are organisms that establish themselves in ecosystems where they do not naturally occur and cause harm. They often outcompete native species because they lack the predators, diseases, or competitors that kept their populations in check in their native ranges. Invasive plants can grow rapidly and dominate habitats, shading out native plants and altering soil chemistry. Invasive animals can prey on native species that have no defenses against them. Invasive species are a leading cause of biodiversity loss, especially on islands where native species are often especially vulnerable. Preventing the spread of invasive species requires careful monitoring of trade, travel, and transportation. Once established, invasives are difficult and expensive to control. However, some efforts have succeeded in removing invasives and allowing native species to recover. Restoring biodiversity after invasion often requires years of persistent effort. Parasites, though often seen as harmful, are an important part of biodiversity. They influence the populations and behaviors of their hosts, shaping ecosystems in subtle ways. Some parasites control the populations of dominant species, preventing them from outcompeting others and maintaining diversity. Parasites can also drive evolution, as hosts evolve defenses and parasites evolve counter-defenses in an ongoing arms race. Many parasites have complex life cycles that involve multiple hosts, linking different species in unexpected ways. For example, some flatworms spend part of their lives in snails, then in fish, and finally in birds. Understanding the role of parasites in ecosystems is an emerging area of research. Far from being merely harmful, parasites contribute to the complexity and functioning of the natural world. Seed dispersal is a critical process that maintains plant biodiversity. Many plants rely on animals to carry their seeds away from the parent plant, reducing competition and allowing colonization of new areas. Birds eat fruits and excrete the seeds far from where they fed. Squirrels bury nuts and forget some of them, which grow into new trees. Bats carry fruit in their mouths and drop seeds as they fly. Some seeds have hooks or barbs that attach to fur, while others are encased in burrs that stick to passing animals. Wind and water also disperse seeds, but animals often carry them farther and to more favorable locations. Plants that lose their dispersers may decline because their seeds fall only beneath the parent plant, where they cannot germinate successfully. Protecting animal populations ensures that plants can continue to reproduce and spread. Mutualistic relationships between plants and fungi extend beyond mycorrhizae. Lichens are partnerships between fungi and algae or cyanobacteria. The fungus provides structure and protection, while the photosynthetic partner produces food. Lichens can survive in extreme environments, from Arctic tundra to desert rocks, where neither partner could live alone. They are sensitive to air pollution, making them useful indicators of environmental health. Lichens also contribute to soil formation by breaking down rocks over time. Some lichens provide food for animals like caribou in the Arctic. Their bright colors and diverse forms add beauty to forests, cliffs, and even gravestones. The partnership between fungi and algae in lichens demonstrates how cooperation between very different organisms can create something entirely new. Flowering plants and their pollinators have co-evolved over millions of years, each shaping the evolution of the other. Flowers produce nectar, bright colors, and scents to attract pollinators. In return, pollinators transfer pollen between flowers, enabling reproduction. Different flowers attract different pollinators. Red, tubular flowers often attract hummingbirds, which have long beaks and excellent color vision. White, strongly scented flowers that open at night attract moths and bats. Bees prefer blue and yellow flowers with landing platforms. Some plants have become so specialized that only one species can pollinate them. The yucca plant depends entirely on yucca moths, which lay eggs in the flowers while pollinating them. The plant provides food for the moth larvae, and the moth ensures the plant reproduces. These intricate relationships highlight how interconnected biodiversity truly is. Losing one partner often means losing the other. Ants and plants have formed numerous partnerships. Acacia trees in Africa house ants in hollow thorns and provide nectar. In return, the ants defend the tree from herbivores and even clear competing plants from around its base. Leafcutter ants cultivate fungus gardens by cutting leaves and carrying them back to their nests. The ants feed the leaves to the fungus, which breaks them down and produces structures that the ants eat. This relationship is so ancient and specialized that neither the ants nor the fungus can survive without the other. The ants even carry antibiotics produced by bacteria on their bodies to protect their gardens from parasitic fungi. These complex agricultural systems, maintained by insects for millions of years, rival human farming in their sophistication. Coral reefs, as discussed earlier, depend on a mutualistic relationship between coral animals and zooxanthellae algae. But reefs are also home to many other partnerships. Cleaner fish and cleaner shrimp establish stations where larger fish come to be cleaned of parasites and debris. The cleaners gain a meal, and their clients stay healthy. Clownfish live among the stinging tentacles of sea anemones, protected from predators by the anemone's venom, to which the clownfish are immune. In return, the clownfish may defend the anemone from predators and bring food scraps that the anemone consumes. These partnerships make reefs not just collections of species, but integrated communities where relationships define the ecosystem. The concept of an ecological niche describes the role a species plays in its ecosystem and the conditions it needs to survive. A niche includes what a species eats, what eats it, where it lives, when it is active, and how it interacts with other organisms. Two species cannot occupy exactly the same niche in the same place for long because one will outcompete the other. This principle, called competitive exclusion, drives species to specialize. In diverse ecosystems, species partition resources by feeding at different times, eating different parts of plants, or hunting in different locations. Warblers in North American forests feed on insects in different parts of trees, reducing competition. Antelopes in African savannas eat different types of grasses or graze at different heights. This partitioning allows many species to coexist, each with its own niche. Biodiversity creates niches, and niches support biodiversity. Edge effects influence biodiversity where two different habitats meet. The boundary between a forest and a grassland, called an edge, often has higher biodiversity than either habitat alone, because it contains species from both, plus species that specialize in edges. However, edges can also be harmful. When forests are fragmented by roads or development, the amount of edge increases relative to interior habitat. Species that require deep forest may decline. Predators and parasites that thrive in edges may increase, harming interior species. Invasive species often colonize edges first and then spread inward. Managing landscapes to minimize harmful edges while preserving beneficial ones is a key challenge in conservation. Biodiversity contributes to cultural identity and spiritual well-being. Many cultures have deep connections to particular species, landscapes, or ecosystems. Sacred groves, totemic animals, and traditional ecological knowledge reflect the importance of nature in human societies. Stories, songs, and ceremonies often celebrate and depend on the natural world. When species or ecosystems are lost, cultural knowledge and practices associated with them also vanish. Indigenous peoples have preserved biodiversity for generations through practices like controlled burning, rotational harvesting, and taboos against overexploitation. Recognizing and supporting these traditions benefits both conservation and cultural survival. Biodiversity enriches human life in ways that go beyond material resources. Ecotourism offers economic incentives to conserve biodiversity. When people travel to see wildlife, coral reefs, or unique landscapes, they generate income for local communities. This can make protecting nature more valuable than destroying it. Gorilla trekking in Rwanda, whale watching in Iceland, and bird watching in Costa Rica support conservation efforts and provide livelihoods for guides, hotels, and businesses. However, ecotourism must be managed carefully to avoid damaging the very resources it depends on. Too many visitors can disturb wildlife, erode trails, and degrade habitats. Sustainable ecotourism balances economic benefits with environmental protection, ensuring that both people and nature thrive. Education and awareness are powerful tools for conserving biodiversity. When people understand the value of nature and the threats it faces, they are more likely to support conservation efforts. Schools, museums, documentaries, and citizen science projects help people connect with the natural world. Observing birds in a local park, planting native flowers for pollinators, or participating in beach cleanups allows individuals to contribute to conservation. Each small action, multiplied by millions of people, can make a significant difference. Education also fosters appreciation, wonder, reminding us that we share the planet with countless other species, each with its own intricate life. Technological advances are aiding biodiversity research and conservation. Camera traps capture images of elusive animals, revealing their behaviors and populations. Drones survey vast areas, monitoring forests, reefs, and wildlife. Genetic tools allow scientists to identify species from environmental samples like water or soil, detecting even rare organisms without capturing them. Satellite imagery tracks habitat loss and climate changes in real time. Acoustic monitoring records the calls of birds, frogs, and insects, providing data on biodiversity in remote areas. These technologies complement traditional fieldwork, expanding our ability to understand and protect the natural world. The concept of rewilding involves restoring ecosystems by reintroducing species that have been locally extinct and allowing natural processes to resume. Rewilding projects have reintroduced wolves to Yellowstone, beavers to Britain, and vultures to parts of Europe. These species often play key roles as predators, ecosystem engineers, or scavengers, and their return can trigger cascading effects that restore biodiversity. Rewilding does not mean abandoning land or excluding people. It means creating landscapes where both nature and humans can thrive. It recognizes that ecosystems are dynamic and that large, intact habitats support the greatest biodiversity. Climate-smart conservation considers how climate change will affect biodiversity in the future. Species are already shifting their ranges in response to warming temperatures. Conservation efforts must anticipate these shifts and protect corridors that allow species to move. Preserving elevational gradients on mountains gives species room to migrate upward as lowlands warm. Protecting riparian corridors allows species to move between cooler refuges. Reducing other stressors like habitat loss and pollution makes species more resilient to climate change. Assisted migration, moving species to more suitable habitats, is controversial but may be necessary for some species with limited mobility. Climate-smart conservation requires flexibility, foresight, and a willingness to adapt strategies as conditions change. Ex situ conservation, which includes zoos, aquariums, botanical gardens, and seed banks, provides insurance against extinction. These institutions maintain populations of endangered species and preserve genetic material for the future. Some species survive only in captivity because their wild habitats have been destroyed. Breeding programs aim to maintain genetic diversity and eventually reintroduce individuals to the wild. Seed banks store seeds from thousands of plant species, protecting them from loss due to disease, climate change, or habitat destruction. While ex situ conservation cannot replace protecting habitats, it plays a vital role in preventing extinctions and supporting restoration efforts. Biodiversity monitoring involves tracking changes in species populations, community composition, and ecosystem health over time. Long-term studies provide invaluable data on trends and help identify problems before they become crises. Scientists use various methods to monitor biodiversity, from counting individuals in permanent plots to analyzing DNA in environmental samples. Citizen scientists contribute by reporting sightings, counting birds, or photographing insects. This data informs conservation decisions, helps assess the effectiveness of management actions, and reveals the impacts of climate change and other threats. Monitoring is essential for adaptive management, where strategies are adjusted based on what is learned. Connectivity between habitats is crucial for biodiversity. Animals need to move between areas to find food, mates, and suitable conditions. When habitats are fragmented by roads, cities, or agriculture, populations become isolated. Small, isolated populations are vulnerable to inbreeding, genetic drift, and local extinctions. Wildlife corridors, which link patches of habitat, allow animals to move safely between them. Corridors can be strips of forest, river systems, or even highway overpasses designed for wildlife. Maintaining connectivity requires cooperation among landowners, governments, and conservation organizations. Protecting large, connected landscapes is more effective than preserving isolated fragments. Legal protections for biodiversity vary by country, but often include Endangered Species Acts, protected areas, and regulations on hunting, fishing, and trade. International agreements like the Convention on Biological Diversity set goals for conserving biodiversity globally. The Endangered Species Act in the United States has prevented the extinction of many species and aided their recovery. Protected areas cover about 15% of the Earth's land surface and 7% of the ocean, though the effectiveness of protection varies. Indigenous territories often overlap with areas of high biodiversity, and recognizing indigenous land rights is a powerful conservation strategy. Strengthening legal protections and enforcing them is essential for safeguarding biodiversity. The economics of biodiversity recognizes that nature provides services worth trillions of dollars annually. Pollination, water purification, carbon storage, and coastal protection have economic value, though they are often taken for granted. When ecosystems are degraded, the costs of replacing their services can be enormous. Building water treatment plants is more expensive than protecting watersheds. Constructing seawalls costs more than preserving mangroves and coral reefs. Recognizing the economic value of biodiversity can justify investments in conservation. However, biodiversity also has intrinsic value that transcends economics. Not everything can or should be measured in dollars. Community-based conservation involves local people in protecting biodiversity. Communities that depend directly on natural resources have strong incentives to manage them sustainably. When communities have rights over resources and benefit from conservation, outcomes are often better than when conservation is imposed from outside. Community-managed forests, fisheries, and wildlife areas can be highly effective. Indigenous communities, in particular, have long histories of sustainable management. Supporting community-based conservation respects local knowledge, builds capacity, and creates livelihoods that depend on healthy ecosystems. Biodiversity and human health are deeply connected. Many diseases that affect humans originated in wildlife and jumped to humans when habitats were disturbed. Maintaining intact ecosystems and preserving biodiversity can reduce the risk of disease emergence. Diverse ecosystems also support the organisms that control pests and disease vectors. Plants and animals provide medicinal compounds that treat illness and improve health. Access to nature improves mental and physical well-being, reducing stress, anxiety, and depression. Protecting biodiversity protects human health in ways both direct and indirect. The future of biodiversity depends on the choices we make today. If current trends continue, many species will vanish, ecosystems will degrade, and the services they provide will diminish. But if we act decisively, the future can be different. Protecting and restoring habitats, reducing pollution, combating climate change, and supporting sustainable livelihoods can reverse biodiversity loss. Every person, community, and nation has a role to play. The challenges are immense, but so is the resilience of nature. Given time and space, ecosystems recover, species rebound, and biodiversity flourishes. Amphibians are among the most threatened groups of animals on Earth. Frogs, toads, salamanders, and caecilians face multiple challenges, including habitat loss, pollution, climate change, and a deadly fungal disease called chytridiomycosis. This disease has caused the decline or extinction of hundreds of amphibian species worldwide. Amphibians are particularly vulnerable because their permeable skin absorbs substances from their environment, making them sensitive to pollutants. They also typically have complex life cycles that require both aquatic and terrestrial habitats. The loss of amphibians affects ecosystems significantly. As tadpoles, they graze on algae and help keep water bodies clean. As adults, they eat enormous numbers of insects. A single frog can consume thousands of mosquitoes, flies, and other insects in a season. Some frogs are also important prey for snakes, birds, and mammals. Protecting amphibians requires maintaining clean water, preserving wetlands, and addressing disease threats through careful management and research. Reptiles include snakes, lizards, turtles, crocodilians, and the tuatara. They are ectothermic, meaning they rely on external sources to regulate their body temperature. Reptiles bask in the sun to warm up and seek shade to cool down. This adaptation allows them to survive with less food than mammals or birds of similar size, but it also makes them vulnerable to temperature changes. Many reptiles are threatened by habitat loss, hunting for their skins or meat, and the illegal pet trade. Sea turtles face additional threats from fishing nets, plastic pollution, and beach development that destroys nesting sites. Crocodilians, despite their fearsome reputations, are important predators that maintain healthy fish populations and create habitats for other animals by digging pools and clearing vegetation. Snakes control rodent populations and are food for larger predators. Conserving reptiles requires protecting their habitats and reducing human persecution driven by fear and misunderstanding. Insects are the most diverse group of animals on Earth, with over 1 million described species and potentially millions more awaiting discovery. They play countless roles in ecosystems. Bees, butterflies, beetles, and flies pollinate plants. Ants and termites break down organic matter and aerate soil. Dragonflies and mantises are skilled predators that control populations of other insects. Many insects serve as food for birds, fish, amphibians, and mammals. Despite their importance, insect populations are declining in many parts of the world due to habitat loss, pesticide use, light pollution, and climate change. Some studies suggest insect biomass has declined by more than 70% in certain regions over the past few decades. This decline threatens the species that depend on insects and the ecosystem services they provide. Protecting insects requires reducing pesticide use, preserving native plants, and maintaining diverse habitats. Spiders are often misunderstood and feared, but they are crucial predators that help control insect populations. All spiders are carnivorous, and most are venomous, but only a small fraction pose any danger to humans. Spiders use various hunting strategies. Some spin elaborate webs to trap flying insects. Others actively hunt their prey, pouncing on it with speed and precision. Jumping spiders have excellent vision and stalk their prey like tiny cats. Spiders are food for birds, reptiles, and other spiders. Their silk has remarkable properties, stronger than steel by weight, and scientists study it for potential applications in medicine and materials science. Spiders are indicators of ecosystem health because they are sensitive to habitat changes and pollution. Diverse spider communities suggest healthy, complex ecosystems. Earthworms, though often overlooked, are essential ecosystem engineers. As they burrow through soil, they create channels that improve aeration and water infiltration. They consume organic matter and soil together, mixing them in their guts and excreting nutrient-rich castings that enhance soil fertility. Charles Darwin, famous for his work on evolution, also studied earthworms extensively and calculated that they could move many tons of soil per acre each year. Earthworms are more abundant in healthy soils with plenty of organic matter. Their activities benefit plants by improving soil structure and nutrient availability. Different species occupy different soil layers, from those that live in leaf litter to deep burrowing species that can move several feet below the surface. Protecting earthworms means avoiding practices that compact soil, reduce organic matter, or introduce toxic chemicals. Mollusks are a diverse group that includes snails, slugs, clams, oysters, squid, and octopuses. They inhabit marine, freshwater, and terrestrial environments. Many mollusks filter water, removing particles and improving clarity. Oysters and mussels can filter dozens of gallons of water per day, making them important for water quality. Their shells provide habitat for other organisms and contribute to reef formation. When mollusks pass away, their shells break down and contribute calcium to the ecosystem. Snails and slugs play roles as herbivores, decomposers, and prey. Some land snails have extremely restricted ranges and are vulnerable to habitat loss. Giant clams in coral reefs can live over 100 years and form partnerships with photosynthetic algae similar to corals. Cephalopods like octopuses and cuttlefish are among the most intelligent invertebrates, capable of problem-solving, tool use, and complex communication. Crustaceans include crabs, lobsters, shrimp, barnacles, and krill. They are abundant in marine environments, but also inhabit freshwater, and a few have adapted to life on land. Krill, tiny shrimp-like crustaceans, form massive swarms in polar oceans and are a critical food source for whales, seals, penguins, and fish. Antarctic krill populations number in the trillions, and their biomass may exceed that of any other animal species on Earth. Crabs are scavengers and predators, cleaning up organic matter and controlling populations of mollusks and worms. Barnacles attach permanently to rocks, ships, and even whales, filtering plankton from the water. Horseshoe crabs, which are actually more closely related to spiders than to crabs, have blue blood that is used in medical testing to detect bacterial contamination. Their eggs are a vital food source for migratory shorebirds. Echinoderms include sea stars, sea urchins, sand dollars, sea cucumbers, and feather stars. They have radial symmetry, usually with 5 arms or sections, and unique water vascular systems that power their tube feet. Sea stars are important predators that control mussel and sea urchin populations. When sea stars were removed from rocky intertidal habitats in a famous experiment, mussels dominated and biodiversity declined. Sea urchins graze on algae, and their populations can explode in the absence of predators like sea otters, leading to the loss of kelp forests. Sea cucumbers are deposit feeders that process sediment, recycling nutrients and aerating the sea floor. Though they appear simple, echinoderms have complex life cycles, with larval stages that drift in the plankton before settling and transforming into adults. Sponges are among the most ancient animals, with fossils dating back over 600 million years. They lack organs, nervous systems, and muscles, yet they are highly successful. Sponges filter water through their porous bodies, capturing bacteria and organic particles for food. A single sponge can filter thousands of liters of water per day. Sponges provide habitat for many small organisms within their complex structures. They also produce a wide array of chemical compounds for defense, some of which have been developed into medicines for treating infections and cancer. Sponges can reproduce sexually or asexually, and some can regenerate entirely from small fragments. Their simple body plan and remarkable biochemistry make them subjects of ongoing scientific research. Cnidarians include jellyfish, sea anemones, and corals. All have stinging cells called nematocysts that they use to capture prey and defend themselves. Jellyfish drift through the ocean, pulsing their bells to move and trailing tentacles to snare fish and plankton. Some jellyfish populations have increased in recent years, possibly due to overfishing of their predators and competitors. Sea anemones attach to rocks or reefs and use their tentacles to catch food. Some form partnerships with clownfish or hermit crabs. Corals, as we have discussed, build reefs and house photosynthetic algae. The diversity of cnidarians and their roles in marine food webs make them important components of ocean biodiversity. Box jellyfish and Portuguese man-o'-wars have powerful stings that can be dangerous to humans, but most cnidarians are harmless and fascinating. Plankton are the drifting organisms that form the base of aquatic food webs. Phytoplankton are microscopic algae and bacteria that photosynthesize, producing oxygen and forming the foundation of marine ecosystems. They are so productive that they generate about half of the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. Zooplankton are tiny animals that feed on phytoplankton and other zooplankton. They include larval stages of fish, crustaceans, and jellyfish, as well as permanent plankton like copepods and krill. Plankton drift with currents, but some can swim weakly. They undergo daily vertical migrations, rising toward the surface at night to feed and descending to deeper water during the day to avoid predators. This migration moves enormous amounts of carbon and nutrients through the ocean. Changes in plankton communities, driven by warming water and ocean acidification, ripple through entire marine ecosystems. Marine mammals include whales, dolphins, seals, sea lions, walruses, manatees, and sea otters. They evolved from terrestrial ancestors and returned to the sea, adapting with streamlined bodies, flippers, and the ability to hold their breath for extended periods. Whales are the largest animals ever to exist. The blue whale's heart alone weighs as much as a small car. Whales migrate thousands of miles between feeding grounds in polar waters and breeding grounds in the tropics. Dolphins and porpoises are highly intelligent and social, using echolocation to navigate and hunt. Seals and sea lions haul out on beaches and ice to rest and give birth, but spend most of their time in the water, hunting fish and squid. Manatees and dugongs are gentle herbivores that graze on seagrass. Sea otters are keystone species that control sea urchin populations. Marine mammals face threats from ship strikes, entanglement in fishing gear, pollution, and noise that interferes with communication and navigation. Birds are found in nearly every habitat on Earth, from polar ice to tropical rainforests to open ocean. They have evolved adaptations for flight, though some species like penguins and ostriches have lost the ability to fly. Birds have lightweight skeletons, powerful flight muscles, and feathers that provide insulation and enable aerodynamics. They have high metabolic rates and efficient respiratory systems that supply oxygen during the demands of flight. Birds play many roles in ecosystems. Raptors like hawks and eagles are apex predators. Songbirds control insect populations. Waterfowl disperse seeds and nutrients between wetlands. Seabirds link marine and terrestrial ecosystems by feeding in the ocean and nesting on land. Hummingbirds pollinate flowers with their long bills and rapid wing beats. Vultures clean up carrion, preventing the spread of disease. Bird migrations are among the most impressive feats in nature, with some species flying non-stop for thousands of miles. Bats are the only mammals capable of true flight. They account for about 20% of all mammal species. Most bats are insectivores, consuming vast numbers of mosquitoes, moths, and beetles. Some bats pollinate flowers and disperse seeds, especially in tropical regions. Fruit bats, also called flying foxes, are important pollinators for plants like bananas, mangoes, and agaves. A few species of bats feed on nectar, fish, frogs, or even small birds and mammals. Vampire bats, found in Central and South America, feed on the blood of livestock, though they rarely harm their hosts significantly. Bats roost in caves, trees, and buildings, often in large colonies. They use echolocation to navigate and hunt in darkness, emitting high-frequency calls and listening for echoes. Bats face threats from habitat loss, pesticide exposure, and a fungal disease called white nose syndrome that has led to massive population declines in North America. Rodents are the most diverse group of mammals, with over 2,000 species. They include mice, rats, squirrels, beavers, porcupines, and capybaras. Rodents are characterized by continuously growing in sizes that they must gnaw to keep short. They inhabit nearly every terrestrial habitat and play many roles. Some are seed dispersers, others are herbivores that influence plant communities, and many are prey for predators. Beavers, as ecosystem engineers, create wetlands that benefit countless other species. Prairie dogs dig extensive burrow systems that are used by other animals, and their grazing influences grassland vegetation. Rodents are often seen as pests, but they are integral to ecosystems. They are also important in research, contributing to advances in medicine and biology. Marsupials are mammals that give birth to relatively undeveloped young that complete their development in a pouch. Most marsupials are found in Australia and New Guinea, though opossums live in the Americas. Kangaroos, wallabies, koalas, wombats, and Tasmanian devils are marsupials. Kangaroos are large herbivores that graze on grasses and can travel long distances by hopping efficiently. Koalas feed almost exclusively on eucalyptus leaves, which are toxic to most other animals. They have specialized digestive systems that detoxify the leaves and extract nutrients. Wombats are burrowing herbivores with cube-shaped feces that they use to mark territory. The Tasmanian devil is a carnivorous marsupial with powerful jaws that can crush bones. Marsupials evolved in isolation in Australia, filling ecological niches occupied by placental mammals elsewhere. Their unique biology and the threats they face, including habitat loss and introduced predators, make marsupial conservation a priority. Primates include lemurs, monkeys, apes, and humans. They are characterized by grasping hands, forward-facing eyes, and relatively large brains. Most primates live in tropical and subtropical forests. They are social animals, living in groups with complex relationships and communication systems. Primates eat a variety of foods including fruits, leaves, insects, and in some cases, small animals. Chimpanzees and other great apes use tools, solve problems, and exhibit behaviors that resemble human culture. Primates play important roles as seed dispersers, spreading the seeds of many tree species through their feces. Many primate species are endangered due to habitat destruction, hunting, and the pet trade. Protecting primates means protecting the forests they depend on and addressing the threats that endanger them. Carnivores are mammals adapted for eating meat, though many also eat plants. The group includes cats, dogs, bears, weasels, seals, and more. Carnivores have sharp teeth, strong jaws, and keen senses. Big cats like lions, tigers, leopards, and jaguars are apex predators that regulate prey populations. Wolves hunt in packs, using cooperation and communication to bring down large herbivores. Bears are omnivores that eat everything from berries and roots to fish and carrion. Otters, both river and sea varieties, are playful and intelligent, using tools to crack open shellfish. Carnivores often have large home ranges and are vulnerable to habitat fragmentation. Many have been persecuted by humans due to conflicts over livestock or fear. Conservation of carnivores requires maintaining large, connected habitats and mitigating human-wildlife conflict. Ungulates are hoofed mammals that include deer, antelope, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, horses, rhinos, hippos, elephants, and many others. They are mostly herbivores that graze on grasses or browse on leaves and twigs. Ungulates are prey for large carnivores and play important roles in shaping vegetation through their grazing. Elephants are ecosystem engineers, creating pathways, digging water holes, and dispersing seeds. Their impact on vegetation influences the structure of savannas and forests. Rhinos are critically endangered due to poaching for their horns. Giraffes, with their long necks and legs, browse on acacia trees that other herbivores cannot reach. Wild pigs root through soil, influencing plant communities and creating habitat for other species. Conserving ungulates often involves protecting large landscapes where they can migrate and find food and water throughout the year. Cetaceans, the group that includes whales and dolphins, are highly adapted to life in the ocean. They are divided into two groups: baleen whales and toothed whales. Baleen whales, like blue whales and humpbacks, filter small organisms from the water using plates of baleen. Toothed whales, like sperm whales and dolphins, hunt fish, squid, and other prey using echolocation. Cetaceans are highly intelligent and social, with complex communication systems. Humpback whales sing long, elaborate songs during the breeding season. Orcas have different hunting techniques passed down through generations, a form of culture. Dolphins cooperate to herd fish and have been observed using sponges to protect their snouts while foraging on the seafloor. Cetaceans face threats from ship strikes, entanglement in fishing gear, noise pollution, and contamination by toxins. Conservation efforts focus on reducing these threats and protecting critical habitats. Plants are the primary producers in most terrestrial ecosystems, converting sunlight into chemical energy through photosynthesis. They provide food, oxygen, and habitat for countless other organisms. Plants range from tiny mosses to towering trees over 300 feet tall. Flowering plants, also called angiosperms, are the most diverse group, with over 300,000 species. They have evolved an astonishing variety of forms, from cacti adapted to deserts to water lilies floating in ponds. Grasses dominate many ecosystems, from prairies to savannas, and include crops like wheat, rice, and corn that feed much of humanity. Conifers, with their needle-like leaves and cones, thrive in cold and dry environments. Ferns reproduce using spores and often grow in moist, shaded areas. Mosses lack true roots and absorb water directly through their surfaces. Each group of plants has unique adaptations that allow them to thrive in particular conditions. Trees are the largest and longest-lived organisms on Earth. Some bristlecone pines in California are over 5,000 years old, having germinated before the construction of the pyramids. Giant sequoias can weigh thousands of tons and grow over 300 feet tall. Trees provide structure in forests, shading the ground and creating habitat in their trunks, branches, and canopies. They stabilize soil with their roots, preventing erosion. They regulate water cycles by absorbing and transpiring moisture. Trees also store carbon in their wood, helping mitigate climate change. Forests are sometimes called the lungs of the planet, though it is phytoplankton in the ocean that produce the majority of oxygen. Nevertheless, trees and forests are critical for biodiversity and ecosystem health. Grasses might seem simple, but they are highly successful and important. They are adapted to grazing and fire, regrowing from their bases even after the tops are removed. Grasslands store enormous amounts of carbon in their deep root systems and soils. Grasses provide food for countless herbivores, from insects to bison. They stabilize soil and prevent erosion. Humans depend heavily on grasses, as crops like wheat, rice, corn, barley, and oats are all grasses. Sugarcane and bamboo are also grasses. Bamboo is notable for its rapid growth, with some species growing several feet in a single day. Grasslands are among the most threatened ecosystems because they are easily converted to agriculture. Protecting and restoring grasslands benefits biodiversity, carbon storage, and soil health. Wildflowers add color and diversity to many ecosystems. They provide nectar and pollen for pollinators, seeds for birds and rodents, and beauty for humans. Some wildflowers are annuals, completing their life cycles in a single season. Others are perennials, regrowing from the same roots year after year. Many wildflowers have specific relationships with pollinators. Certain orchids can only be pollinated by particular species of bees or moths. Milkweed is the sole food plant for monarch butterfly caterpillars. Wildflowers often bloom in succession, ensuring that pollinators have food throughout the growing season. Native wildflowers support more biodiversity than non-native ornamental plants, because local insects and other organisms have evolved alongside them. Planting native wildflowers in gardens and restoring them in natural areas benefits pollinators and other wildlife. Cacti and succulents are adapted to arid environments where water is scarce. They store water in thick, fleshy tissues and have modified leaves, stems, or roots. Cacti, native to the Americas, have spines instead of leaves, which reduce water loss and provide protection from herbivores. They perform photosynthesis in their green stems. Succulents, found worldwide, include plants like aloe, agave, and jade. Some can survive months without water. These plants often have shallow, widespread root systems that quickly absorb water when rain falls. They also have thick cuticles and specialized photosynthesis pathways that minimize water loss. Cacti and succulents provide food and shelter for desert animals. Birds nest in saguaro cacti, and bats pollinate the flowers of agaves and certain cacti. These plants are well suited to hot, dry conditions, but climate change and habitat destruction still threaten many species. Carnivorous plants grow in nutrient-poor soils and supplement their diet by trapping and digesting insects and other small animals. They use various trapping mechanisms. Pitcher plants have tube-shaped leaves filled with digestive fluid. Insects fall in and cannot escape. Venus flytraps have hinged leaves that snap shut when trigger hairs are touched. Sundews have sticky tentacles that ensnare insects. Bladderworts, aquatic carnivorous plants, use suction traps to capture tiny organisms. These plants obtain nitrogen and phosphorus from their prey, allowing them to survive where other plants cannot. Carnivorous plants are often found in bogs, marshes, and other wetlands. They are fascinating examples of how plants can adapt to challenging environments in unexpected ways. Fungi are neither plants nor animals, but form their own kingdom. They play essential roles in ecosystems as decomposers, mutualists, and pathogens. Fungi break down dead organic matter, from fallen leaves to dead trees, recycling nutrients back into the ecosystem. Without fungi, forests would be buried under mountains of undecomposed material. Mycorrhizal fungi form partnerships with plants, and other fungi partner with algae or cyanobacteria to form lichens. Some fungi are parasites, causing diseases in plants, animals, or other fungi. Fungi reproduce by releasing spores, which can be dispersed by wind, water, or animals. The fruiting bodies we call mushrooms are just a small part of the fungus, which spends most of its life as underground networks of hyphae. Fungi come in an astonishing variety, from tiny yeasts to enormous underground networks covering acres. Bacteria and archaea are single-celled microorganisms found in virtually every environment on Earth. They inhabit soil, water, air, and the bodies of larger organisms. In the human gut, trillions of bacteria aid digestion and produce vitamins. In soil, bacteria fix nitrogen, decompose organic matter, and cycle nutrients. Some bacteria are photosynthetic, capturing energy from sunlight. Others are chemosynthetic, deriving energy from chemical reactions involving sulfur, iron, or other elements. Bacteria and archaea can survive in extreme environments, from boiling hot springs to frozen Antarctic ice. Archaea, in particular, dominate harsh habitats like salt flats and deep-sea vents. These microorganisms are fundamental to life on Earth, driving the cycles of carbon, nitrogen, and other elements that all organisms depend on. Viruses are not technically alive because they cannot reproduce on their own, but they play significant roles in ecosystems. Viruses infect bacteria, archaea, plants, animals, and even other viruses. In the ocean, viruses control bacterial populations, influencing nutrient cycling and the flow of energy. Some viruses carry genes between hosts, facilitating the exchange of genetic material. Viruses have shaped the evolution of life on Earth, and pieces of viral DNA are found in the genomes of many organisms, including humans. While some viruses cause diseases, many are harmless or even beneficial. Understanding the diversity and ecology of viruses is an emerging field with implications for medicine, agriculture, and environmental science. Algae are photosynthetic organisms that range from single-celled phytoplankton to large seaweeds. They produce much of the oxygen in the atmosphere and form the base of aquatic food webs. Green algae are closely related to plants, and some scientists consider them part of the plant kingdom. Red algae and brown algae are distinct groups with unique pigments and structures. Brown algae include the giant kelps that form underwater forests. Red algae are found in deeper waters where red and blue light penetrates. Some algae live in symbiotic relationships with corals, sea anemones, and other organisms. Algae are also commercially valuable, used in foods, cosmetics, fertilizers, and biofuels. Despite their importance, harmful algal blooms, often caused by nutrient pollution, can release toxins that harm wildlife and humans. Lichens are symbiotic partnerships between fungi and algae, or cyanobacteria. They are pioneers, colonizing bare rock, tree bark, and other surfaces where few other organisms can survive. Over time, they break down rock, contributing to soil formation. Lichens absorb moisture and nutrients from the air, making them sensitive to air pollution. Scientists use lichens as indicators of environmental quality. Lichens come in many forms, from crusty patches on rocks to bushy growths hanging from tree branches. They provide food for animals like reindeer in the Arctic. Some lichens produce colorful pigments that have been used as dyes. Lichens grow slowly, with some individuals living for hundreds or even thousands of years. They remind us that cooperation between different organisms can create something resilient and enduring. The interactions between organisms are as important as the organisms themselves. Competition, predation, symbiosis, and other relationships shape the structure and dynamics of ecosystems. Evolution occurs not just in response to the physical environment, but also in response to other organisms. Predators and prey engage in evolutionary arms races, each adapting to outwit the other. Plants evolve defenses against herbivores, and herbivores evolve ways to overcome those defenses. Parasites and hosts, competitors and mutualists, all influence each other's evolution. The result is the intricate web life we see today, where every species is the product of millions of years of interaction and adaptation. Biodiversity is beautiful. The colors of a butterfly's wings, the song of a thrush, the pattern of a snake's scales, the shape of a flower, the movement of a fish through water, all these things enrich our lives. Nature inspires art, literature, music, and philosophy. It provides solace, joy, and a sense of connection to something larger than ourselves. The loss of biodiversity is not just a scientific or economic concern. It is a loss of beauty, wonder, and meaning. Protecting biodiversity means preserving the sources of inspiration and awe that make life worth living. Every species, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, has a place in the web of life. a beetle that pollinates a single species of orchid, a fungus that decomposes a particular type of wood, a worm that lives only in the soil beneath a certain tree, all contribute to the functioning of ecosystems. We cannot always predict which species are essential and which are expendable. Often, it is the loss of a species that reveals its importance. The precautionary principle suggests that we should protect all species because we do not fully understand the consequences of losing them. Each extinction narrows the possibilities for the future and diminishes the resilience of ecosystems. Hope lies in the actions we take. Around the world, people are working to protect and restore biodiversity. Scientists study ecosystems and species to understand their needs and threats. Conservationists create protected areas and restore degraded habitats. Communities develop sustainable ways of using natural resources. Governments pass laws to protect endangered species and regulate harmful activities. Individuals make choices in their daily lives that reduce harm to the environment. All these efforts matter. They demonstrate that humans can be stewards of the earth, not just exploiters. The story of biodiversity is still being written, and the ending is not yet determined. Tonight, we have wandered through forests and reefs, soils and seas, exploring the astonishing variety of life that fills every corner of our world. We have seen how species adapt to their environments, how they connect with one another, and how they form the living systems that sustain the planet. Biodiversity is not just a scientific concept, it is the foundation of existence, the quiet hum of life continuing in countless forms. It is frogs calling in the rain, fungi spreading through the soil, fish schooling in the ocean, and trees reaching toward the light. It is complexity and connection, resilience and renewal. As you settle into sleep, let yourself imagine the world teeming with unseen life. Beneath your feet, microbes are cycling nutrients through the soil. In distant forests, nocturnal animals are beginning their nightly routines. In coral reefs, half a world away, fish are sheltering among the branches. Living stone. The web of life continues, patient and enduring, weaving itself into patterns too intricate to fully comprehend. You are part of that web, connected to every other living thing through the threads of evolution and ecology. Rest now, knowing that the natural world will carry on through the night, just as it has for billions of years. Let your breathing slow and your thoughts settle like snow falling softly on a winter forest. You have done enough for today. Close your eyes, rest, and dream of forests breathing, oceans swaying, and the quiet persistence of life in all its forms. Good night.